Welcome back to Natural 2, our D&D and tabletop role-playing podcast. Today we are covering a topic that I feel like many a DM has tried to get better at, or at least try and tackle in some significant way, and that is your players' enthusiasm, energy, and attention. The things that we put forward are hopefully going to help draw them back in, keep them a bit more focused, and keep them off of their phones. I am Nathan. My co-host today is James. I guess you're my co-host every single time. But what is our first point, sir?
So our first way to grab your player's attention, a personal favorite of mine, and that is to have handouts, props, anytime you can produce a physical object from the game world and show it to the players, and now suddenly it's real, it's here in meat space. That is such a buzz every time, at least for me. I can't get enough. And I've seen so many great examples online of people who have potion bottles and even magic rings. And of course, the classic is notes and wanted posters and any document at all on paper that you age with coffee and burn the edges or whatever the case may be. But it also works online.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you've got some there behind you.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember. I want to call this out. I don't remember if we've talked about this on a video yet or not, but you went the extra mile and had.
Let me, I'll grab it, I think. Hopefully this will show up on camera with the glare. There we go.
Yeah. So you went the extra mile and made the same handout in two different languages so that the players at the table who had that language could read the translated version.
Mm-hmm.
So cool. So yeah, as a player, I know that I eat stuff like that up, but it works online as well. Even if you're on an online game, don't give up on this kind of thing. There are, again, great examples. People have done bounty boards where the players can see an image of all of the notes and the quest quest requests. That's a tough one to say. You know what I mean. Or your letters and documents, those can be images, and that can be very effective as well. And of course, now with AI art being a thing and speeding us to our automated dystopia, you're running out of excuses not to have at least a picture of the person or the thing that the quest is about. So this is a straightforward way to make people sit up and notice.
Yeah, and I mean, there are the obvious ones like the wanted poster and the letters and the notes, which again are very easy to replicate in like a virtual space. And while it doesn't have the same effect of like being able to hand someone a scroll, especially when they're not expecting it and they're like, "Oh my God, like I get to read," you can get some of that energy from doing it online. The other things that I think a lot of people don't often consider is if you're ever coming up to like a puzzle, or you know you're coming up to a puzzle where it's going to be difficult for the DM to describe the like intricate mechanics of it to the players, you can use a visual aid, much as like a battle map might be, where you can like maybe show the pegs that they are putting things into and have little icons that represent it. Obviously, again, having this physically at the table would be a lot more cool, but having it virtually accessible does give the players more like agency of being able to decide what they're doing and see it play out in real time, and also a bit more energy because they're not trying to sit there and keep all these different things straight and what pin was in this hole last time, but then this guy moved it and no one, took that into account. And it's not only a way of keeping attention, but it's also a tool that you can use to help keep communication, I guess, like exact. I'll then immediately argue the opposite. That's also a fun thing to play around with as the DM, is handing them handouts that they kind of get to interpret, whether it's a letter with blood smears on it so some of the words are missing, or whether it's a letter that they don't know the sender or the receiver to, so it's uncertain who is requesting what or who is putting forward what. While sometimes this could be annoying because your party now hates a random NPC that has done nothing wrong, sometimes you can use this to your benefit and have your players start scheming and making up little red yarn maps of, all these connections, which is engagement at the end of the day. So that's the ultimate goal.
And don't be discouraged if you aren't particularly crafty or artistically inclined, because in the first place, if you're willing to spend a little money, then you can basically get anything you want online,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and just adopt it into your game. But even if you don't want to go that route, a little effort goes a long way. You may not think that you're very artistic or very skilled in that direction, but you don't have to be. Even, just something that you put a little bit of work into is going to be appreciated.
It's
I,
more the thought that counts, is kind of the concept.
yeah, I would just about guarantee that uh, it will still get your table, oh yeah, cool, wow. So don't stress it. Just do it.
Mhm. The little caveat I will throw on before we move to the next topic is don't put too much emphasis on it and don't put too much weight. I've seen a few posts here and there across the community of like, oh, I made this intricate little puzzle box that like you have to do all these little cool things and find the magnet that slips in, and then my players just didn't like it. And it's like, that is something that you might run into, but I think that is an issue that plagues DM in general. Like you make a map you're really excited about, you make an NPC you're really excited about, and it's not held up to the standard you want it to be. So just be prepared for that as well. But when you do hand a player something physical or present something to them specifically, it's a lot more difficult for them to just like throw it away than something else that is kind of part of the more mundane expectation of D&D. But our second topic, our second point here, is trying to keep your attention, or I guess the spotlight of the game, kind of constantly shifting. This is one of the pieces of feedback that I received pretty often getting into being a DM long term. Is a couple of the players would be like, oh, whenever we split the party, which is, usually pretty rare for our game, it's difficult for me to keep attention, when it's like 10, 15, 20 minutes and there's just nothing for me to engage with. So even if you could just like hop back to me so we could do a quick 30-second scene of like, this is what I'm currently doing while, the other things going on, that would at least keep me a bit more present. So I've tried to incorporate that more, and I think it is a useful thing to keep in the back of your head when you are running a session. And this doesn't only apply when the party is split. This also applies to when like a scene is playing out. If one of the characters is just kind of sitting in the background and not doing anything, or one of the issues we've run into semi recently is if they don't speak a language with any of the NPCs and they're just left to kind of stand in the background because they literally can't communicate. Try and find ways to, I don't know, not throw them a bone, but I guess that is the best expression. Like, maybe they can't communicate, but they are, I don't know, fiddling with something in the backpack, or they're like mumbling something under their breath, just so that they're engaged, because no one wants to sit there in 20 minutes of silence and watch other people play a game that they've also come to play.
And a good way to avoid the sort of pop quiz effect of like calling somebody's name and they're not ready. If you can remember to do it, tell them ahead of time. Say, first we're going to cover what's going on between Bob and Ella, and then we're coming to you after that. So you can tell them that they're up next, they're on deck, whatever the case may be, so that they know to expect that it's going to shift to them in the near future. So next, something I like to call, let them catch the car. Like a dog chasing a car. Sometimes let them catch it. It's fun as a DM and fun as a player. Sometimes when the party prevents the bad guy from escaping. And everybody thought that he was going to get away. Everybody thought, oh, the DM loves this guy. He's going to keep dragging him out for the next 20 sessions. We're never going to get him. Oops, we got him. Now what do we do? So you could also call this maybe subverting players' expectations. But sometimes let them. I don't want to say outsmart themselves, but surprise themselves.
Surpass their own expectations.
Yeah. I think another good example is Firefly was good at doing this. The TV show Firefly. Um, there's a scene that is very top of my mind where they're standing outside of the spaceship and the bad guys have their hands cuffed behind their backs, and the main bad guy is giving his monologue, and it doesn't matter where you go or what you do, I'm gonna find you, I'm gonna hunt you down, and I'm gonna kill you, and you'll never see me coming. And his big speech gets clipped by the hero booting him into the spacecraft engine, and he dies. And that's something that we as the audience, at least at that time, it's a little more well worn now, but at that time you weren't expecting that. You were thinking, oh, this is a recurring villain, we're gonna see him again. No, he's toast. And that is something that you can bring to your game so that the players don't get this sense that they know what you're gonna do. Like I think that this is a counter to something that I think that feels kind of yucky for everybody, is when the players start to act and talk and think like they can read the DM, they know what's going to happen, they know who's bad, they know who's a traitor, they know who's going to get away no matter what, like stuff like that starts to get icky fast. And so counter that. Um, or even just let the dice decide, and when they sink their teeth into the bumper of that car, watch the fun as they try to figure out, what do we do now.
It is interesting because I think we've run into this a couple times throughout our game, and there's been the one time that I have uh, in my mind presently is like when you guys caught up to Novin and Aether, and you like had like a fireside chat with him. Like it was strange that like you guys kind of caught him, but not really, but kind of did. And so there was just this weird like I don't know awkwardness of like, well, what do we do? Well, we can't attack him because he's probably gonna kill us, but like we got to do something, right? Like this is what we've been hunting for forever now, right? And while I don't think it was anybody's, fantasy of how it was all going to play out and, casting him down into the fire, it certainly, at least, I guess, got your guys' attention. And it was certainly something that I guess was different than what the expectation had kind of become. So it's a weird piece of advice, at least on my side, because while it can kind of catch the player off guard and get them reinvested, I think it can also have the effect of they catch them and they have absolutely no idea what to do. And while that can lead to an interesting scenario and it can lead to a memorable moment that everyone talks about, it's strange because you can't ever really predict what's going to happen. I mean, that's a lot of D&D is having cool things happen and then reading the bones and making the story work. But yeah, I would just be relatively prepared for the players to not be prepared, which I imagine most DMs are pretty familiar with. But especially when you're talking about this and you're laying the trophy at their feet, they probably don't have an answer for that off the top of their head.
That can be what is fun about it,
Yeah, exactly.
especially if you've got a know-it-all in the party, or somebody that's always a little too quick with the answer.
Hmm.
Then yeah.
Yeah.
How do you like them apples?
So one of the points that I think is easy, because it literally is the whole point, is providing players the things that are asked for again and again. The things that are the easiest for you as a DM to dish out like little bits of candy. The analogy that I instantly think of when bringing this up is I don't know if people have this similar experience, but back when people were teaching children to read at my age, there was the gimmick of like putting an M&M at the end of each paragraph or something stupid like that, so they would read through the book and then get little treats in that stupid dopamine rush of, oh yeah, got through that. That is kind of, I guess, the mentality that I have in my mind is like when you have a D&D party doing things and achieving goals, a lot of the time the DM gets lost in like, oh yeah, like they've come so far as characters, they've explored all these cool things, they have all these stories to tell, and the players are like, yes, but we have 3 gold pieces and a chunk of bread. Help. So I think a lot of the time the DMs kind of forget to give out those generic things because at least what it kind of came down to with me is I was like, ah, just giving out magic items and stuff is so boring. Why don't I figure out something way cooler to do? And then never actually gave you guys something that is kind of a core resource, I guess, for player enjoyment. So sometimes give them a cool magic item, give them a bunch of gold. I don't know, celebrate them, have a parade in their honor. You could do a lot of different things. But yeah, sometimes it is just easiest to do something objectively rewarding to the party that isn't delivered with some sort of curse or plague or deception. Just give them something nice sometimes.
Everybody likes treasure, and from the character's point of view, you almost can never have too much. Uh, there will always be the drive to get more, and if as the DM you're worried about giving too much, um, I would say first of all that it's actually harder to hit that watermark than you think, in my opinion. But also, there's always you're the DM, you are the universe. There's always a way to fix it or to work around it. So don't worry too much about it.
I would think in this specific scenario, I would worry more about quality than quantity, like as far as being concerned about what you give them. Like if you give them a magical item that is obscenely powerful, kind of like a singular thing, then it's going to be difficult for you to then give them something else that is just as interesting because you've now set the bar really high. But if you give them a lot of appropriately leveled and measured and balanced things, then it's still reasonable for you to present new things that still interest them because you're not trying to match the god ring of uber death of 1000 power word kills. Like that should probably never be given out, but giving out a bunch of smaller things kind of pushes that problem away.
This is maybe a good time to think about a magic item that grows in power or that can grow in power. Talk about getting the players invested. Like, here's a magic sword that becomes better as you complete these tasks or kill these monsters. That's that's an adventure that writes itself. Finally, our fifth and final point of the video is it's a tough and sometimes frustrating balancing act as DM because you should have some kind of plan. It doesn't have to be pages and pages long, but you should have a loose idea of the direction that the game can take in your mind. And you should be prepared to throw it out and to react to what the players are doing, what they are chasing, what they are interested in, and to take what you thought you were going to be doing and either put it on the back burner or in some cases throw it out completely and go a totally different direction because that's the direction the players are going in. Um, Improvisation is a skill that I think DMs have to develop. I don't think there's a way around it. Um, you've got to get comfortable with it and you've got to get kind of good at it in order to have the best game that you can. Because one of the things that's exciting about this game is that sense that you really can do anything or go anywhere in the world of the game. And I know this myself. It happened to me. I'm not only a member, I'm also a client, or I don't know, whatever. If the player hits an invisible wall, they're at a real risk of checking out as soon as that happens. It will shatter their illusions. It will take away their immersion. It will cause them to. What's the opposite of buying in? Selling out? You know what I'm
Jumping.
saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, they will check out. Uh, so even if your improvisation is bad, do it anyway, because that is still better than having to stop your party in their tracks and say, well, it's cool that you were interested in that, but no, that I just don't. I don't have that for you.
Mhm.
Um, and if you can buy time, even you can buy yourself time. You could say, let's take a break while I get some things ready. If you need to take a breath, that's fine. Anything, but this zone is only for levels 12 and above or whatever.
Yeah. I think this is so often said, but I think one of the reasons so often said is when you're really into D&D or really into the game, you can kind of lose sight of like what D&D is all about. And at the end of the day, it is a game that everyone comes to the table to have a impact and effect on, right? Like the DM is not coming to tell a story, the players and the DM are coming together to tell a story. So when you lose that balance of letting the players have actual meaningful decisions and adjustments and effects on the world and the story, then you're eliminating half of the game entirely. I guess even more than half, and that's a problem. And I think you see this most often with DMs who think, and this is kind of maybe a poor way of phrasing it, but they think they know better than their players. Like maybe their players are new and they're like, oh, they're gonna try all these wacky, silly things that just don't work mechanically. So like, I'll just kind of tell them, here's the easiest way to solve the problem, and then we'll go through this adventure and we'll have a good time. But what that really turns into at the end of the day is like a DM kind of like backseat playing everybody's characters and kind of like steering them towards certain solutions where even new D&D players, because the game is so inherently built off of real life immersion or how people act, or I guess like someone's humanity, there is this natural intuitiveness of, I want to try this. Can I do this? How do I make this work? Oh, what if I tried that, right? And if you eliminate that and if you squash that, I think you're going to have an issue. Not only is your story going to suffer, your players are going to start caring less, and I imagine you're probably also going to have less fun because a lot of the best moments I think back on as far as a DM is not when all of my intricately laid plans, all panned out perfectly. It's usually when like I can visually see one of my players just over the moon about something that happened, and 95% of the time it's something they began and started and then I built around. So that would be kind of, I guess, the broad way of bringing everyone back to a bit of a reality check if you lost the plot there for a moment.
And just as a postscript on this point, um, try not to let on when you are pulling stuff out of the ether
Mm-hmm.
and when you're making it up as you go.
Mm-hmm.
That is also that is a skill that's almost as important as improvising itself. Because your players, chances are, won't know. They won't be able to tell, and they don't want to. We all want to imagine our games as happening somewhere in some dimension, in some fairy realm, and the DM is just in the periscope, seeing what happens and then telling us about it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way that the game plays out, and we all want it that way. So don't do and say things to take away from that if you can help it.
Yeah. But yeah, I think as long as your heart's in the right place, or at least your intentions are in the right place, that is something that is just kind of natural to the game. I think a lot of like friend groups that just kind of get together to pal around and play D&D are pretty proficient in this because they're not tied to anything super insane and they're not trying to get a specific thing out of it. They're just trying to have fun. So if you find yourself leaning away from that, just try and kind of, I don't know, ask the question or analyze your game a little bit and see if that's something you might be doing.
On that note, that's our list. If there was something that you started the video thinking that you were sure was going to be a part of the list and then it wasn't, put it in the comments.
Mm-hmm.
And along with any other questions or complaints or remarks. And while you're down there, like and subscribe. Like and subscribe.
Yeah,
Just
getting your
do it.
players' attention is always going to be an uphill battle. It is always going to be a topic within the community. Hopefully, we have also captured your attention with our ramblings and our advice. So, yeah, as always, put in your own 2 cents if you think that we missed something or should have addressed something that we did not.
And with that, until next time.
Have a good one.